Shangshung Tene Kangne Sapchong.
Shangshung Institute presents workshops.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Oh, good. So as I was having lunch, I remembered that I didn't put the lovely yellow flowers nor the pink peppercorns on the yogurt sauce, but it was part of my lunch. I had cooked in advance I steamed some potatoes and I poured the sauce over it and then put the flowers on and the pink peppercorns and had some sprouted mung, and that was my lunch, light and protein rich and easy to digest. And just as a note about the potatoes that I cooked in advance, for individuals who have difficulties with how do I want to say, like the words coming in French, can't think of it in English, doesn't matter. But anyways, like an upset in their microbiota. Is that the word in English, microbiota? Microbiota in the small intestine, and have difficulties with digesting grains and things like that. You can make starch resistant, or you can eat foods that are starch resistant, which help a lot with these conditions, often like Crohn's disease or IBS or inflammatory conditions, and can be appeased. It's not really a cure, but if there's a flare up, and anything that has to do with flames has to do with heat, by eating starch, resistant starches. So that would be like cooking up a potato and letting it cool down so that you eat it room temperature, or even rice or any kind of grain cooked in advance and cooled down. When those grains or starches cool down, the starches become resistant, which means that they basically bypass part of the digestion, notably in the liver, and require less energy for being digested. So very soothing, very cooling to inflamed intestinal tract. Am I making sense? Yeah, okay. So that's just kind of an aside, but also has to do with a pitta imbalance. And then another thing that I didn't mention is that in the sauce that we made, we could also use a spice synergy, and we're going to make a synergy together. And that would be a way of adapting a dish more to your constitution. Let's say you're cooking a dish for an entire family and you don't want to cook different things for each member. Everyone could have their own spice mix, adaptable to their needs. And that way you can cook a neutral or one dish, or more than one dish, but you could cook food that's for everybody, and then everyone can adapt. And we'll talk more about that when we come to the spice mixes. And then another thought came to my mind, Julie, and that was about the milks. Often those vegetable-based milks that are found in containers are they have a very high glycemic index, which means that they're very sugary and very syrupy. And in fact, in order to make them, those grains are cooked down into a syrup, kind of like a rice syrup or a malt syrup, and then water's added to them. So they spike blood sugar levels really quickly. Whereas if you were to make your own nut milk or own grain milk, it wouldn't have the same effect. So those individuals who are sensitive to sugar levels in the blood, good idea to make your own. And talking about just briefly levels of sugar in the blood, something that can really help with balancing that is to take a walk after your meals. Ayurveda gives some nice suggestions on how to enhance our digestion. And one of the things is to take a digestive walk. So 100 steps minimum, but it could be more. And we're not talking about going jogging or doing something vigorous, but the idea is to keep the legs moving, which are connected to the colon and the downward movement, and that will help the digestive process. Another thing that's beneficial for enhancing digestion, especially for the liver, and individuals who have a lot of heat, is after the meal, maybe after you brush your teeth. I don't know if everyone brushes their teeth after lunch, but to hold cool water in the mouth, open the eyes and splash cool to cold water with eyes as wide open as you can, all the while holding that cool water in the mouth. And it's a way of relaxing the liver and assisting in digestion. And that's also something that you could consider doing in the morning when you wake up. It's something that it's one of those early morning rituals that people in the East do. And same thing, to wake up the senses, to wake up digestion, same thing, cool water in the mouth and splashing cold water in the eyes. And very beneficial for us these days with all the time we spend on screens. So very tearing on the eyes, but also has an effect on the liver. According to traditional Ayurvedic medicine, the liver and the eyes are connected. And when there's an imbalance in one, it'll show up in the other and vice versa. So that's why not only do we need to protect the liver, but we also need to protect the eyes. So individuals who have tendencies towards being pitta in nature or pitta imbalance, it would be a good idea to wear sunglasses when you go out, especially during the day between 12 and 2, and to really pay attention to screen time. And that's another place where rose water would come in. This is my summer fire extinguisher. I have a hydrosol of rose and I always have it nearby. It can be helpful in the nose for hydrating the nose, for opening up the senses. I spray it on my face. Sometimes I put it in food, but it's very, very cooling. Good if you have a sunburn or other. So I'll just enjoy for a moment thinking of you. And any kind of hydrosol is beneficial. So think about that as a summer fire extinguisher. Other things about enhancing digestion. One thing would be, in general, to eat the meal, the most, how do I say? The meal that's the most important, that's the richest and densest at lunch and lighter at night, which will help assure sleep. The later we eat, the less restful our sleep will be. And we can notice those individuals who wake up at 2, 3 in the morning kind of systematically. This is an indication that the liver is needing a little more love, a little more attention, and a little more kindness, meaning that if you've eaten late and you haven't digested, it's often the liver that takes the brunt. And waking up at liver time, which is between 1 and 3 in the morning, can be an indication that the liver is a little sleepy, a little sluggish, or it's been overworked. So you can help that by eating earlier in the evening. Ayurveda would recommend leaving a space between 2 to 3 hours, 2 minimum, 3 is ideal, between the time you end your meal and the time you go to bed. And granted, our meal times are kind of pushed later in the summer because it stays light longer. It's too hot to eat early, but just if you can keep those evening meals more on the light side. It's a good idea to slow down while eating. Pitta individuals, or those with pitta imbalance, tend to eat fast, just kind of race right through their food. So putting down your fork or your spoon or your hands, if you eat with your hands, during bites is a good idea. Also, sitting down to eat rather than being on the go, eating on the move, eating while you're driving, eating while you're watching something. Those are good ideas. And then keeping good company is really important when we eat. And my Ayurvedic, first Ayurvedic teacher, Dr. Vasant Lad, says that if you're going to have a heated conversation, have it at night, especially in the summer. That way it'll be less heating on the body, less heating to the emotions. And along with the eating is what we drink during a meal. It's a good idea to keep your drinks to a minimum during a meal. Think about more drinking to hydrate or to soften or to bring emolliency to what you eat, rather than drinking huge quantities of liquids during a meal. It's better to drink before or in between meals. And if you're eating foods that need extra help, meaning foods that are dried or dehydrated, notably beans that have been dry, You need to cook them really well with a lot of water. Soak them a day or 2 or 3 before, changing the water every day. Cooking them more on the soft side, and that way your body will need less water to digest. Also, any dried fruits, raisins, prunes, figs, whatever, which are easy travel foods. We eat them when we go hiking or camping or this and there because you don't have to cook them. But know that those are very drying fruits and foods, and they need a lot more water to be absorbed in the body. So all those foods, chips, dried nuts, what else can I think of that is really right? Crackers, all those foods that are really dry and drying in nature, kind of at a minimum in the summer. And I'll give you some alternatives as we go through the afternoon to replace those foods that are overly salty, overly drying, overly oily, which can be difficult for digestion in the summer. And the one thing about, last thing about drinks is, again, and it's not really the culture in Europe or in Asia to drink icy cold things as it is America, where I grew up, where there's ice all over. So really keep to the side anything too cold, with the exception of a good beer in the summer. In terms of alcohol, and I'll cover that a little bit because sometimes in the summer, part of conviviality, being with friends and good company, it's having some kind of beverage. Out of what we can drink in terms of like a cocktail or with the meal, know that all the hard alcohols are extremely heating, very spreading, very sharp. All those qualities we talked about that are inherent to summer and inherent to a pit individual. Better to have a beer in the summer, which is more, it's better for the kidneys and not so heating and refreshing. A little bit of lime or lemon in it. White or rosé wine are going to be less heating than red wine. Red wine is red, so the color red is going to give heat, but also the tannins in the wine. And red wine is also much heavier than white or rosé wines. And ideally would be to skip the alcohol altogether and have spritz or spritzers, using sparkling mineral water or some kind of sparkling beverage with bitter herbals inside. I don't know if you know about the Swedish bitters or anything that is bitter in nature, even some of those appetizers, those very old appetizers. In Italy, there's like the chinar, which is based on artichokes. There's Fernet Branca, which is a mix of all different kinds of bitter herbs. In France, there's Suze, which is based on gentian root. All these bitters and bitter cocktails can be diluted with a sparkling water or just water in general, and had as a spritz tonic, which would be much less heating, much less drying, and much less aggravating in the summer. And maybe you have some great ideas as well. I do have some, I'm going to jump ahead and show you some ideas for hydrating drinks in the summer. So let me find the page. Sorry, it's a little slow. Okay, here we go. So here are some ideas, some cooling summer tonics. One is a cardamom limeade, which is basically water, lime juice, a bit of cardamom, and a sweetener if you want. Just mix them together. If you want to have it cool, put it in the fridge, but take it out a little bit before. Remember, not too cold, but basically no ice if possible. A cardamom mint infusion, which is something that has been heated. So putting water to boil, putting some cardamom pods and some crushed mint leaves, turn it off the heat, let it steep, and enjoy either cool, warm, or as you wish. It's not a mistake to drink hot in the summer. If you travel to certain parts of the world, let's say Northern Africa, where people sip mint tea all day long. It's never on ice, it's always hot. So more in tune with the temperature of the body. But then it's always a personal choice. Here's a recipe that Dr. Vasant Lad gives. He calls it a cucumber milk. I call it cool as a cucumber milk. And when I was a student at the Ayurvedic Institute back in 2003, there was a colleague of mine, and she started to lose her skin. Her skin just basically started to peel off her body. And Dr. Lad gave this milk as a remedy, and her skin started growing back. It was amazing. And so this would be specific for bringing coolness to the body and also for skin disorders if you can digest cucumber, because there's cucumber inside. So basically you take milk, and here the original recipe is made with dairy milk, but you could also use a plant-based milk. With milk, according to Ayurveda, it's always better digested once it's been brought to a boil. So that helps transform the mucus producing qualities of animal-based milks. With a bit of cardamom. The cardamom brings a sweet taste, but it's also good for digesting milk products. And then you let that cool once you've brought it to a boil, and then peel, de-seed, and grate half of a cucumber and blend it all together with or without, as you want, a sweetener. And you have this lovely cucumber milk that brings cooling the body and excellent for the skin. And as you're working with that cucumber, preparing it, keep the skins and place them on different areas of the body. It's very cooling. It feels good. Then herbal infusions. I talked a little bit about this morning when I showed you the lemon verbena infused water. Either, so taking whatever flowers or petals or leaves, and what I've suggested here are particularly cooling: hibiscus, rose, mint leaves, hyssop, lavender, and there are plenty of others. You could also even use some cooling spices like cumin, coriander and fennel, or even fennel, where you would just put the seeds to let infuse in the water. And you can steep them in the sunshine if you're needing a little more heat. And if you want that prana or that energy from the sunshine to magnetize or potentialize your water, you could put them in the moonlight. Ayurveda considers the moon to be particularly cooling and calming and nourishing, especially for a pitta individual. Or you can do the refrigerator method, where you put the substance in the water, put it in the refrigerator overnight, and take it out and drink it when you're ready. So those are some ideas of cooling tonics. Others are a summer CCF tea. For those of you who followed the spring version of this, we did tea with 3 spices that are, according to Ayurveda, are good for everybody. And let me show you that recipe while we're there. So CCF is cumin, coriander, and fennel, which is a synergy of 3 spices that are specific for digestion. Ayurveda considers these 3 spices, when they're in synergy, to be a panacea for any digestive ill. So basically, the recipe is to take the whole form of those 3 seeds, cumin, coriander, and fennel, and boil them in water. And from there, add on or not other things. The basic recipe is cumin, coriander, and fennel, which is a very, how do we say, you have to be a little careful with this tea, because even though it's cooling, it's good for reducing heat in the body, but also good for individuals who have bladder infections, women who have tendencies toward bladder infections. It's excellent. It's also an excellent spice tea that regulates or balances acid and alkaline levels in the body. So for people who are too acidic, they could benefit from this tea. However, it's a diuretic, so it's going to make you pee a lot. So be careful if you're not in a place where you can pee. And so it can be a little draining and drying on the system. So you can adjust that with the quantities that you use, but also in the summer, you could add some cooling options, some even more cooling options. For example, rose petals that I have here. You could add some rose petals, fresh or dry, and the same mint leaves you could add, or any other variation that you would enjoy. And this is something that can be drunk warm or cool, or even what I enjoy doing is making up a pot of this and then using it as a base for cooking my grains, rice, quinoa, or other, or a soup, or putting it any area or any place where you would put a broth or a bouillon, or just need liquid for cooking something. So it adds a little taste to, for example, to grains, and also gives that added digestive effect, because spices in Ayurveda are used not only for taste, but for their action on enzyme production, and also to help with foods that are problematic, that are difficult to digest, and also just to really help with the whole digestive process. So in general, cumin tends to be a little more heating than coriander and fennel. And so when it's used alone, it'll have more of a heating quality to it. But when it's used in tandem with fennel and coriander, it becomes more neutral. So back to our cooling summer tonics, almond milk, adding some rose petals or rose jam, for those of you who know how to make rose jam. It's famous in France. There's a place where there are roses, and it's near Paris, and they have a famous rose jam. Also used quite often in India in preparations. You could also use a hydrosol there, or rose water. Agua fresca, this is typical to Mexico, but probably other places, where we diffuse vegetables or fruits in water. So one way to do it would be just water, pure water, or even to use coconut water from the young, fresh coconuts. And if you can get real coconuts that are fresh, they're extraordinary. What you find in the long conservation packs doesn't really have much taste compared to a real young coconut if you've had in Asia, but it's an option. So what you do is you chop up a cucumber and pour the water over the top. You can add a little salt, or you can add a little sugar, or a little of both, up to you. Or a fruit, cherry is especially nice. And you put them in the refrigerator overnight, and it creates this nice, tasty water, or basically all the essence of the vegetable or the fruit goes into the water and makes a very cooling, rehydrating, refreshing drink. Another thing you can make is chia or flaxseed water. And here is a chia water. I just put 1 tablespoon of whole chia seeds in water overnight. And here I have this nice gelatinous drink that'll help me to stay hydrated. Will give that demulcent quality, softening the tissues so that the tissues can better receive any liquid substance that I'm going to take into my body. It's very refreshing, and has a lubricating and also, how do I say, laxative effect. So individuals who are prone to diarrhea, you don't need to include this so much, but those who have a little dryness on the inside or difficulties with elimination, good to drink on a daily basis. You can do the same thing with flax seeds, and including these two in your diet in general is a good thing. Ground up and sprinkled over food is a way of getting more fiber, more omega-3 fatty acids. The one thing that shouldn't be done with chia and flax seeds is to cook with them because they lose their properties. And the flax and the chia seeds can also be added to any of these summer cooling tonics that I'm suggesting, or even in a fruit juice or wherever you see fit. They're kind of one of those, they're grains that go anywhere. Or seeds that can be mixed with basically anything. Here's a kind of a sports drink. In America, they call it Gatorade. It's this fluorescent green, disgusting drink that sports people drink. But you can make your own rehydration brew by putting a couple of pinches of salt, lemon or lime juice, and a sweetener of your choice in water. And it's very rehydrating, rich in electrolytes. And then another thing that's extremely cooling and beneficial to soothe all kinds of inflammation, helps as well with the with elimination, very beneficial for the liver, good topically as well as aloe vera gel that you can take on a daily basis before meals, 2 to 4 ounces. You can doodle it in water, herbal tea, fruit juice, or just have it straight up like a shot. But the one thing is probably best not to heat it, otherwise it'll lose its cooling properties. So those are some ideas of cooling tonics for the summer to drink. Okay, now what did I promise you? I promised you to go back and look at something that I forgot this morning. So in this marinated fennel salad, I had a suggestion of creating some crunch for the salad and a way of enhancing digestion. Fennel seed is considered by Ayurveda to be one of the most sattvic spices, if not the most sattvic spice, which means easy to digest, gives a calm, clear, and even-keeled mind. And so this recipe is more of a healthy alternative to what you might find when you leave an Indian restaurant, where you see by the door a little container with sugar and seeds. Well, those seeds are fennel seeds, and the sugar is probably rock candy. Sometimes you see them coated with pink pastel colors, which is a ton of white sugar. And this is not so good for digestion. However, the fennel seeds are. So this recipe is to candy the fennel seeds. But for those people who don't eat sugar or try to avoid sugar, you could definitely make this without the sugar, just by lightly dry toasting the fennel seeds, whole fennel seeds, in a pan. And then let them cool and put them away in a jar. Take them with you when you go out and you can't control what you're eating, or if you have tendency to have digestive issues, there'll be kind of a first aid kit. Otherwise, sprinkling them on your food or just crunching on them when you have a sweet tooth, you want something sweet, but you aren't really hungry. It's just the body calling out for something. Maybe it's to appease an emotion. But anyways, it can help to satisfy a want or a want for sweet. And remembering that something that is sattvic in nature is satisfying. So to do this recipe, it's very simple. I'm not going to show the actual cooking process, but basically you make a brine from a natural raw sugar. And here I have rapadura and a little bit of salt. And then you pour water over the top, and preferably warm water, so that the salt and the sugar will dissolve. And so you can make that, put it aside, and then take your pan and put the fennel seeds in, the raw whole fennel seeds, which, by the way, should always be green. If you buy fennel seeds that are brown, it's probably they've been in the store too long. So nice green fennel seeds. And then, so you dry toast them, and you want to be careful to do this over medium to low heat, because fennel seeds are very fragile, maybe not more fragile than other seeds, but they burn very quickly. So it's best just to dry toast them. And then once they've slightly changed colors and they start to emit a nice, pleasant smell, it's time to take them off the heat. Then you pour the brine over the top, and you stir quite quickly. Otherwise, it'll all stick to the bottom. And then you put it aside and let it dry. And don't put them away right away, because you'll get this gloopy, sugary thing. So it's best to spread them out so that they can dry. If they don't dry with this method, you can also slide them in a very warm oven, not hot, but maybe 75, 100 degrees, and let them dry completely. So it makes a nice way to end a meal, to have something that's not a dessert, but kind of like a dessert, and very helpful for digestion. Are there any questions concerning that or anything else at present? No, everyone's good. Also, another spice that's nice at the end of a meal as a digestive and also as a way of cutting the want for sugar is cardamom pods, just to crunch on a cardamom pod. Not to eat the outside, but eat the grains on the inside. Cardamom has a way of appeasing the need to eat sugar. It's very helpful for regulating blood sugar and also helps with absorption and assimilation. Okay. Glenn, I will answer your question later on, and if I forget, I will come back to it. So I want to move on with the program, but I will definitely cover that. In terms of let's see. Okay, what I didn't cover this morning, let me take a little sidetrack before I start talking about the tastes. I need to do another screen share here. There's one recipe I didn't cover this morning, and it involves, it'll be a nice segue into talking about the 6 tastes. Excuse me, can everyone see? So here we have a cilantro coconut chutney. And as I mentioned this morning, one way of enhancing digestion is to include all 6 tastes in a meal, in our major meals. And instead of saying, well, okay, I'm going to choose this vegetable because it has this taste, I'm going to choose this because it has this taste, which can end up being a real nightmare and kind of a puzzle for our brains. We can use spices, but we can also use a sauce, such as this one, that brings together all of the 6 tastes in one, which means that we can eat whatever we've decided to eat without worrying about are all the 6 tastes present. And we can use a sauce that combines them all and kind of does the job for everything. It can also be accomplished with a spice mix, and the spice mixes are a synergy. Other words for that are masala or curry or churna. Those are all interchangeable. I call my spice mixtures for digestion synergies. But using a spice synergy is also a way of including the 6 tastes. The one taste that would be missing is the sour taste, but you can always accomplish the sour taste with lemon, lime, a little bit of vinegar, or some kind of condiment that's has that sour taste. So let's look at this cilantro coconut chutney. And it's something that's that brings together kind of the classics of what you would find if you were to travel in India or eat in an Indian restaurant. This is something that you can find all over. It's very cooling and refreshing, and it's the perfect antidote for eating anything that's overly spicy or overly heavy or overly rich. So this cilantro, which is one of the world's most cooling foods, can be kind of difficult to find, I've found living in Europe. In the States, you can find it easily because there are a lot of Mexicans, and it's something that's very prevalent in Mexican cuisine as an antidote to their spicy food. And you can also find it in Asia quite a bit, but not always in Europe for some reason. But you can grow it quite easily just from seeds, the same seeds you would use in your kitchen. Funny, it's the one thing I had a hard time finding for the workshop today. I thought it would be easy to find. Of course, it's kind of Murphy's Law in that I can find it anytime when I don't need it, and when I need it, I couldn't find it. And what I found was kind of sad and weepy and not so green. So today I'm going to use half mint and half cilantro, which is the same thing as the seed of coriander seed. From that you get cilantro. So this recipe has the 6 tastes. So we have with the cilantro, we have bitter and astringent. With the grated ginger root, we have pungent. The coconut is going to be sweet, but also a bit astringent. And we have lemon or lime juice, which is going to bring the sour taste. The liquid natural sweetener will also bring the sweet. So we have all 6 tastes right in this sauce. I forgot bitter, and bitter, cilantro would be considered a little bit bitter as well. So super simple, but you need a blender for this one. And if you don't have a blender, I'm going to tell you a way of how you can do it. It's a good idea to put the liquid in, otherwise it has a hard time getting started. So starting with the water, then your liquid sweetener, which again, best to avoid honey in the summer, but if that's all you have, it's not a big deal. And on the note of honey, the lighter the honey is, the less heating it is. And the younger the honey is, the more cooling it will be. Which means that if you want to use honey in the summertime, choose a young honey. What is a young honey? A young honey is a honey that's been harvested within the last 2-3 months, not something that you've had on your shelf for 3 years. So the older honey gets, the more heating it gets, and then the more heating it will be on the body. So here's our sweetener, and then lime juice. And then our dried untoasted coconut, which is going to bring fiber and cooling. And our ginger root, excuse me. Now with ginger root, it could also be turmeric root that you could add, one or the other or both. This is going to give a little pungency and also stimulate digestive juices. I usually don't I usually don't peel my ginger just because it's kind of a pain. But if I do peel it, I use the back of a spoon or the back of a knife. I don't peel it, I just scrape it. And that way we save more of the good part of the ginger. And if it's young ginger, it doesn't even really need to be peeled because the skin is so thin. And again, with these recipes, the quantities can be adjusted if you like it more tangy, or if you like it more salty. You have all kinds of options. And then with this recipe, if I had a whole bunch of cilantro, I wouldn't even take the stems off. I might cut them a little bit, but this is one recipe where you can put everything right in the blender. But I'm going to chop it up a little bit just to ensure that I get the nice consistency that I want. You could also eventually add a little olive oil or a little bit of something oily substance. If you want, you could put an avocado in. If you wanted more protein, you could add some seeds like sesame seeds, or not sesame seeds, sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds or hemp seeds or almonds. Better in the summer to stay away from the bigger nuts. It could also be cashew, which in general, and I'll talk about this in a little while, the different nuts. Everything that's not a seed or not almond is very safe for the body. Difficult on digestion, so to be used in small quantities. Okay, here's our greens. And I'll talk a little bit also about chlorophyll, but you can, any green food that you eat is going to be cooling in general, especially the leafy greens. And it's going to really, you can think of chlorophyll as a fertilizer for your intestines. So helping with good bacteria, helping to digest anything and everything, but also helping the liver and the gallbladder that love bitter, they love astringent, and also anything that's green. So here we go with the recipe. I think I need a little bit more water. And I'm going to cut my sound so that I don't And here we have it. this nice sauce. I'm going to pour in this jar. It's a little chunky for my liking. I like it a little more compact. It's my blender. That's the fault. It's not me. But what I suggest when you make this recipe, if you're making it for the first time, and also it all depends on the quantity of cilantro you have, but start with a little bit of water and then add as you go. Know that for anybody with skin issues, drinking cilantro juice on a daily basis is extraordinary for bringing down heat, especially good for adolescents with pimple, acne problems. Excellent. And the way that it can be done, and I just want to taste this quickly to make sure it's edible. Excellent. Sauce is really good. Goes with fish. It goes with white meats. It's excellent on steamed vegetables. Sometimes I like to drink it just like that. With any kind of Indian style dish or Asian dish, it's excellent. It's one of those versatile sauces that kind of goes with everything. Maybe less with potatoes because of the acidic, the lemon and the lime, which is not the best combination with potatoes, but with everything else, it's a good thing. So back to the cilantro juice. You would just take a bunch of cilantro and put it in a blender, pour room temperature water, mix it up, pour it through a strainer and drink the juice that you've made. Or if you have a juice extractor or a juicer, you could also juice it. But the afterwards, with what's left in the blender, that pulp from the leaves, you can apply it as a paste to areas of the body where you're affected by some kind of skin issue, whether it be psoriasis or eczema, or you have your child has acne outbreak, or if in general you're just wanting to have a cooling facial mask. This is a great one. Okay, another way of using this sauce, and I like to give ideas on how to use these recipes so that you have variations and also ideas. One is to make up this sauce, but don't put the lemon or lime juice in it. And once you've made the sauce, to use it as a base for cooking rice. So you could start to cook rice with like half of the quantity of water that you would cook. And when I say rice, it could be also quinoa or any other thing. And then halfway through the cooking process, pour this sauce over the top to make a green rice. It's an excellent cooling rice for the summer, or even any kind of greens, spinach, kale, Swiss chard. You could use the same method with or without the coconut. The coconut could also be replaced by a little bit of coconut milk. And that's another recipe or another way of making a green rice. And you could make it more tasty by sauteing some onion or shallot, some garlic, or even if you digest it well, green pepper. That could also go into that rice. So another idea on how this sauce can be, you can have different variations on it. All right. I'm just going to stop the share for a moment, check the chat. There's a question. Let's see. Okay. Before I go on, I'm going to answer one question from Jamyang. Soy milk is heavy to digest. What's the Ayurvedic view of soy sauce and tofu? So soy sauce, and Jangyam, I'll let you answer that. In your opinion, and this is a good segue into the tastes, what are the tastes? What is the predominant taste of soy sauce? Jamyang, are you there? Hello? Hello? Salty, yes. And we haven't talked about taste yet, but maybe let's do so. Let me get back to the screen share. Let's talk about tastes. So Ayurveda has a way of categorizing the tastes into 6. In general, we need all 6 for enhanced or optimal digestion. However, everybody needs them in different quantities. Now, there are 3 tastes that enhance each of the constitutional types, and 3 tastes that aggravate. So the idea is that we understand what our constitution is, or our constitutional imbalance is also important, or we just simply eat the tastes according to the season. For each season, there are 3 tastes that are beneficial and 3 that we can avoid. And this is all based on the nature of the taste. So each taste is based or made up of 2 elements. You can see them here. Sweet is earth and water. Sour is air and fire. Salty is water and fire. Bitter is air and ether. Pungent, fire and air. And astringent, air and earth. And so now I'm going to give you a little quiz. Up to you to let me know, in your opinion, which 3 tastes are beneficial in the summer and which 3 are not so beneficial in the summer. And without looking too far, think about the predominant quality of summer and about our mantras: like increases like. Anybody? Bitter, sweet, and astringent. Glyn gets 10 points. Bravo. And why? Because these are the tastes that do not have the fire element to them. So we're going to choose those 3 tastes to better navigate through the summer. So here we go. We have the 6 tastes and summer. Trying to get out of the chat. So the idea is that we don't forget the ones that are aggravating. We just use less of, because we need all 6 tastes. So in the summer, we want to favor the soothing, cooling tastes: sweet, bitter, and astringent. And we want to eat less of everything that's pungent, salty, and sour. And I say again, we're not going to completely forget them, but we're going to momentarily put them aside or use smaller quantities of. And why? And let me tell you just a little bit about each of the tastes. So if you think about, and I'll go back here to, so you can have a visual, the qualities of earth and water. So earth and water are cooling, they're moistening, and they're heavy. And so these qualities are what we look for in the summer. When we're too hot, we look for something cooling. When we're dry, we look for something moistening. And when we're feeling light, like a hot air balloon, we want something that's a little anchoring without being too heavy. So if we have too much of the sweet taste, we might feel lethargic. Like if anytime you've had like an overly sweet dessert, really you feel heavy and you don't feel good. So there's sweet, and then there's really, really sweet. Like a fruit is not considered to be overly sweet. But a chocolate cake made with white sugar is definitely going to be heavy and overly sweet. So what does sweet do? And the sweet gives anchoring. It grounds, it soothes, it especially calms the nerves. And why do we go for the sweet taste? Often because we're living in a day and age where everyone's nerves are frazzled. And so the quick fix is to go for something sweet. And that's why it becomes the predominant taste, along with salty. The other tastes we see a little less of, at least here in the West. Sweet also helps to soothe the mucous membranes, which can get very irritated by pollution, by stress, by wind, if you live in a windy climate. And also sweet taste builds. So that's why children love things that are starchy and sweet and sugary. It's because, first of all, their brains need it, but also their bodies are growing and building, so they need that sweet taste. Bitter and astringent. Those are so we have the three tastes, or three tastes for summer: sweet, bitter, and pungent, which will also be the three tastes that a Pitta individual in general would want to favor in their diet. So let's look at bitter and pungent. They both have the air element. Oh, sorry, bitter and astringent. Bitter and astringent. Three tastes for summer: sweet, bitter, and astringent. And so bitter, like my Ayurvedic guru, if you want to call him, Dr. Lad, would always say, bitter is better, with an Indian accent. Bitter is better. Bitter is often lacking from our modern Western diet. And if it is included in our diet, it's often masked. One example is endives, which are typical northern France and in Belgium. Often there's a sweet vinaigrette that's put on endive, or endives are braised in order to take the bitter taste away from it. And for me, it's kind of funny to think that we're trying to get rid of the bitter, whereas we could be introducing bitter as something that's beneficial for health. So bitter is cooling, it's light, and it's dry. The idea of having those qualities in the summer are going to help us lighten and wring out excess water, especially if we have a tendency to retain water. The bitter taste helps to detox the tissues and dry them up. That's often why it's used as a predominant taste in the spring, to kind of dry up the excess water from the winter. It stimulates our digestive fire. Why are herbal bitters used, have been used for centuries before a meal as an appetizer? So it stimulates the appetite, stimulates Agni. Bitters are antibiotic, so that's especially important in our days. Often when traveling in tropical countries and you want to prevent from getting any kind of tropical disease due to the damp, wet, humid, hot nature of the place, having bitter herbs like neem, which would be used in Ayurveda, would be beneficial. Also, the bitter taste helps to regulate blood sugar. For individuals who have issues with the pancreas, diabetes, bitter is the best taste. Also, bitter is cooling, it's light and dry. Cool, light, and dry, what we're looking for in the summer. And similar to that is astringent, which is the air and earth elements. Very similar to bitter, although where bitter is light, astringent is considered to be heavy. Not as heavy like sugar, like sweet, excuse me, but compared to bitter, it's not as light. So astringent is cooling, heavy, and dry. It's also very anchoring. It contracts. It helps to absorb water, so excess water in the body, or just water in general. Think about legumes or dried beans, peas, lentils, dal, all those things. They are all astringent by taste. And why do people have issues with gas, flatulence, and bloating after having eaten those substances? It's because often of their drying nature. Dry enters a body that's dry or has a dry colon. It's going to create gas, flatulence, and bloating. So we need to add a little bit more water when we cook and make those beans soft in order for them to not create those digestive issues. And because astringent is cooling, we need to add some warming spices along with some good fats. Also, the astringent taste helps to dry up excess pitta, dry out excess issues with pitta, clears the blood, heals the skin and mucous membranes. So those are some qualities that are beneficial, or why we would choose those tastes in the summer over others. Now, to look at the ones that we need to consume less of, pungent, we know it's heating. What's heating is also drying. So those are the two main qualities of the pungent taste: heating and drying. Burns toxins, excites the senses, dries fat, dries the mucus tissues. It's a spice also that helps to increase appetite and helps to move things through the body. So that's pungent, which is fire and air. Salty is also heating, water and fire. Think of how we get salt. We get salt by drying salt water or mined in the mountains. We find salt where there were ancient lakes. So salty by nature is heavy. It's also heating, but it's also moist or moistening or oily. If we have issues with water retention, we want to diminish our salt intake or choose a salt that doesn't contribute to water retention. If we have too much salt, whether it be internally or externally, like you swim too much in the ocean, your skin gets dried out, but too much salt intake would dry out the skin, dry out the mucous membranes. And then we have the sour taste, which is earth and fire. Sour is warming and it's light. It helps, it's really beneficial in our diet to help pull together tastes. For example, if you have a dish that doesn't really have much taste, but you've put every spice in the world you could think of to make it taste good, just adding the tiniest little bit of sour, whether it be a little bit of vinegar, a little bit of lemon or lime, will help pull the taste together and bring out the tastes. Sour helps us to digest fats and to digest oils. Why do we put it in a vinaigrette? It's to help emulsify fat. So it also works on the liver and the gallbladder. If we have too fatty of diet, it's an excellent way of helping to exercise our liver and gallbladder. Helps to appease thirst. Why do we drink lemonade in the summer? Because it's refreshing. It makes your lips pucker. It helps to encourage secretions of fluid in the body, which is beneficial. And it helps to increase the flavor of food. If we have too much sour, we can have skin issues, and those people who have issues with the skin flare-ups, eczema, psoriasis, hives, urticaria, those kind of thing. That's one of the tastes, along with pungent, that can really send the fire roaring, meaning spreading, irritating, making those skin issues flare up. So use with parsimony. So that's a quick overview of the 6 tastes. And we have to, like I mentioned at the beginning, adapt these notions to our situation, to where we are, and to what we need in the moment. Maybe there's one day where you might need a little more sour, and it might be even in the middle of the summer where it's one of the tastes where it's not so highly recommended to use. But you've had a heavy meal, something was too oily, and just having a little bit of sour will help move things along, will help help the liver, help the gallbladder. So that's important. And along the in the other sense, the other flip side of the coin, it comes to my mind because summer can be a time of being with friends, relaxing, have an alcoholic beverage, and maybe sometimes more than other times of the year, to protect the liver and the gallbladder before you go out, whether it to be to a meal or just to a cocktail. You could consider taking a tablespoon of olive oil on a spoon and just chug a lug. And it's a liver and gallbladder protector before having alcohol. So just one idea. Any questions pursuant to that? So that was all to get to the question, or to get to the answer for Jamyang. Soy products, soy sauce. Soy is considered salty, and soy sauce is concentrated salt. A lot of those condiments are very, very rich in salt. So if you are a pitta individual, it's something to not use so much of, to use a low salt soy salt, and to use it preferably out of the summer, out of the hot months of the year. And although a lot of the world's oldest people, or the people who live the longest, come from Okinawa Island in Japan. Just in general, the country of Japan is one of the countries that has a lot of digestive issues, especially in the stomach, because of the overconsumption of salt. It's a place in the world where they have a lot of dried fish, salted fish, salty condiments like soy sauce. So just to let you know that it's not always recommended. It all depends on what you need, who you are. And it's one of those foods that's very sharp and very concentrated, very dense, very spreading. So, and fermented as well. So it has the sour taste as well. So not something to favor in the summer, maybe more in the fall when you need grounding or you need that salty taste, or in the winter. Let's see. Also, in terms of salt, one thing that you could potentially do for the summer, that's I like to play in the kitchen, but I also like to be outside, is to make herbal salts, taking whatever dried herbs that you like. It can even include fresh herbs that you dry, or even any kind of spices, and mix them in with salt to make to use less salt. It's a way of cutting the salt. There's one that I particularly like. It's my own invention. I didn't borrow this from anybody. It's what I call a pink salt. And so I took pink Himalayan salt. I crushed up or ground up in my little spice grinder rose petals, hibiscus flowers that were dried. I put in some fennel and some cardamom. And all of those ingredients were about 3/4 of it to 1/4 of salt. So I decrease my salt consumption, and I add things that are seasonable to help with the cooling and hydrating, and I still get my salt. So that's one idea. It could also be thyme, oregano, pink peppercorns, anything that's more summery in nature, and that you could also then each season adjust seasonably. And then the other question from Jiangnan was about tofu. Tofu is very dense. It's very cooling, very heavy, and also difficult to digest if it hasn't been transformed. Just very quickly, soy should always be consumed in traditional forms, meaning traditional coming out of Asia. So in Asia, originally, they didn't have soy burgers, soy sausages, soy yogurts, and all of these soy derivatives. Textured vegetable protein, big no-no. Cross that one off your list, please. And soy consumed cold is not something that's part of those cultures. And I see some Asians out there, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. But the idea is that you consume soy that's been fermented. So fermented forms of soy would be tempeh, which is whole soy that's been sprouted and put into kind of cakes that you would then marinate and cook. But just know that it's one of the forms of soy that creates a lot of gas. So if you don't have the digestive enzymes for it, you want to be far from your friends and family after having eaten it, or diffuse some essential oils in the room. Otherwise, soy sauce is also fermented, and that's a traditional form of soy, as is miso, which is soy paste that you would dilute into a sauce or into a bouillon or a broth. And then there's also natto, which is small black soybeans that have been fermented into a paste. And then next in line would come tofu. But tofu is never intended to be eaten cold. So all of those desserts you see with soft tofu, raw, a lot of raw movement uses cold tofu, is very, very difficult for digestion because of its nature. Heavy, oily, cold, and humidifying. So if you really want to wreak havoc long-term on your system, eat cold soy. But it can be made in a way that's digestible. So cooked with all legumes and beans with warming spices, spices that are particularly helpful for tofu digestion, but also any kind of grain or any kind of legume or bean. Come to mind: turmeric, cumin, fenugreek, mustard seeds, ginger, What else? Also herbs like thyme, rosemary. The Mexicans use epazote, which is excellent. Bay laurel leaf is excellent also. Seaweed, and coming back to talking about salt, a way to replace salt in the summer is to use sea vegetables or seaweed that you could actually mix with salt if you want to reduce your salt intake. But using kelp or kombu in your bean cooking is a way of adding minerals, but also reducing the flatulence producing qualities of beans, as is a very magical Ayurvedic spice called hing, H-E-N-G, or asafoetida, which is the equivalent of what you would find in America of Beano, which is a food supplement that helps with gas, flatulence, and bloating and bean digestion. But asafoetida is a resin. It comes from the parsley and the carrot family, and it's a resin that is used just a pinch or two in bean cooking, which helps enormously with digestion. So I highly recommend using asafoetida, and it's like the most vata pacifying spice that exists. Very good as well for any kind of digestive heaviness. You've maybe had some animal protein at night and you don't digest it in the morning. You feel very heavy. Everything's kind of sitting in your stomach. A pinch or two of hing with a couple pinches of turmeric powder in hot water. Nickel. Sorry, that's French. It'll give kind of like a like when you flush the toilet, it'll give that kind of effect in your digestive tract. It'll move out things that are in the stomach that are too heavy and not digested. And there are many other uses for it, but that's for another class. So that's a little bit about tofu. So always spiced, always heated, never cold, and in small quantities, 2 to 3 times a week, and small quantities like maybe 4 to 6 ounces. Maybe that's too much. I'll have to think about that one, but not morning, noon, and night every day of the week. And it's certainly not in cold drinks like in smoothies or things like that. Okay, moving right along. Time is going by quickly. So let's look at the spice mixtures now that we've looked at the tastes. And for those of you who are participating in the making process, let's talk a little bit about summer spices to enjoy and others you can enjoy as well. So these are all spices that will have cooling and soothing effects on the body. So we talked about coriander, cumin, and fennel when we talked about the tea, the herbal tea in the last session, meaning this morning. And I won't go through all of these. You'll have the document, you can study, you can look yourself. But basically, these 3 spices are particularly beneficial for Pitta individuals, but also good for the summer. So they decrease the heat and the excess of Pitta. They're all anti-acid. The coriander especially helps to cool the stomach without affecting digestion. Normally, when we have things that are too cooling, it can slow down digestion, but coriander actually enhances digestion, helps the liver to clear and decongest the liver, helps to promote bile flow. Cumin is excellent. You can use it in your cooking. You can eat, crunch on the grains before a meal or after a meal, especially when you're having beans or you're having cheese. So excellent for reducing fermentations in your intestines, helps to cool the stomach and acidic stomach, all while supporting your digestion. And fennel is one of those, it's the most sattvic spice according to Ayurveda, which helps with all kinds of things, especially in the sphere of the intestines. It's really good for burning sensations and very soothing. And there's an E missing on spice. Other spices that are ideal for the summer, cardamom, which helps increase bile production, which helps us stay lubricated, the bile, helps to digest fats. Helps to recover lost appetite for people who have lost their appetite, helps to bring it back, boost digestive strength. It's something that, along with ginger, fresh ginger, that if you cook meat on a regular basis, that you should include because it helps with meat digestibility, digesting that protein from animal sources. Saffron, which is the world's most expensive spice, but you don't need very much of it. is really beneficial for health. You can make a tea from it, or just even put the stamens in water and a whole pint or a liter, drink that through the day to help stay cool, help to support liver function, helps to invigorate the blood. And it's been proven, there were studies done, that it helps food cravings and to reduce them by 50%. I'm all for that. Curcuma, the list is long. We could fill pages of the benefits of curcuma. Curcuma is turmeric. I translated some of this from a French presentation I give. So turmeric, and turmeric is anti-inflammatory, as we know, really helps with the blood and the liver, helps with skin, whether it be taken internally or applied to the skin. It's great as a face mask. Women in India have been using it for centuries to keep their skin nice and glowing and a good hale to the skin. And one of those spices that's excellent for helping to reduce gas, bloating, and flatulence. Now, just one piece of information in passing. When I studied Ayurveda formally for the first time back in 2003 with Dr. Vasant Lad, never did he talk about the addition of purpurine or pepper to curcuma to make it effective. And I don't know if there's been research done ever since, or if it's a marketing thing to get people to buy more turmeric or pepper, I don't know. But this mix, when you read here and there, it says, oh, if you really want to get the benefits of turmeric, you have to have pepper with it. That's not absolutely true. Just know that adding pepper to curcuma, or turmeric, sorry, adding pepper to curcuma, turmeric, is going to enhance the anti-inflammatory qualities of turmeric. But do know that's only one aspect or one beneficial thing to turmeric. It's not the only thing. So if you have a heat issue in your body and you stay away from anything that's pungent, if you have skin issues, if you have just too much heat in general, or even in the summer, please don't feel like you have to put pepper with turmeric in order to get turmeric's benefits. You'll get just as many benefits by not having it and using it in a way that's digestible. So always in its whole form. Forget about the extracts or the things that you can buy, the food supplement. Just get yourself some good old turmeric root and use it as you would ginger root in your kitchen, in your cooking. Grate it. I like to eat it just like this. Just crunch on it. My teeth turn yellow, but I don't care. Or use it in a powdered form. And in powdered form, cooking with it, rehydrating it in something liquid, or even using it in an oily medium to better enhance its absorbability. And I think tonight, after this talk is over, I'm going to take some turmeric powder and just lightly toast it in a dry pan and mix it with a little bit of honey, even though I know it's not supposed to be eaten in the season, but it's excellent for irritated throat or voice, or having talked too much. So that's one home remedy for turmeric. So now, how do we use these spices? Well, one idea is to make a digestive synergy. So this is the synergy that I put together and I sell. I would call it the Pitta digestion, which is specific for the summer, but also for individuals who have acidities, acid reflux, excess fire, excess Pitta in general. It's something that could be used all year round. And the idea is that we put together, so these 5 magical spices that I talked about just now. And the idea normally with Ayurvedic, the way of the Ayurveda recommends that we use spices, is to, for the seeds, is to lightly dry toast them in order to bring out their volatile oils, so the vitality in these seeds. Otherwise, they're a bit sleepy, if you want. They're a little dormant. So they need to be helped a little bit. So we just lightly dry toast them in a dry pan. I'm not going to show you to do that today. It's something that's pretty straightforward. You just have to be careful to use a spoon and stir so that they don't burn, because it can happen very quickly. Use low to medium heat. And you do each seed individually. So first just do one seed and then the next, and then let them cool. And once they're cool, you grind them. Now, this is something you can do with seeds. However, no need to grate up ginger, let it dry and grind it up unless you have the time or the energy for that. Same with cardamom pods. More the bigger spices you don't do that with, but it's mainly with the seeds. It can be cumin, coriander, fennel, what do you call caraway, fenugreek. Everything that's in seed form can be done in that way. And today, just for ease, in the ingredient list, I asked you to get powdered spices just to make things easy. And that's also a way of doing it if you don't want to dry toast them. So you would basically dry toast them, let them cool, grind them up in a little mixer, like a little spice grinder or like a coffee grinder. I have a what is traditionally a coffee grinder, but I use it only for spices. Grind them up and then put them in a jar and mix them all together. Now the quantities here are my formula. No one gave me this recipe. If you want to alter the quantities, free to choose, free to do what you want, and have that creativity. Also, if you don't like cumin, don't put it in. If you have other spices you like, put them in. You just want to make sure that for summer that you're not using spices that are too heating. Other things that I add in, but if you're not keen on it, it's not obligatory, but traditionally you would put natural sugar, like a raw natural sugar, like rapadura, sucanat, muscovado, jaggery, those kinds of things, and a little bit of salt in order to include all 6 tastes. And for summer, I like to add in some dried mint or some organic rose petals, or why not both? So that's just one way of using these spices, bringing them together. Used individually, all of these spices are definitely beneficial, but they become all the more beneficial, all the more potent when they're mixed together. So this is like the equivalent would be like making your own curry, which often has very heating spices. So here you get to tailor it to your own needs. And this is what I was suggesting earlier, like if you have a diverse family with everyone has a different constitution, which is normal and natural, and that's how we find harmony. It's in our diversity, but we want everyone to be happy. So everyone can have their own spice mix and have it on the table like salt and pepper. And that way you can cook one way and then everyone can tailor it to their own needs once the dish is on the table. And let me give you some other ideas on how to use these digestive synergies. You can cook them directly in a dish, like if you're cooking a soup, lentils, a grain dish, vegetables, a curry, like you would any other spice. What you don't want to do with these spices is use them right over a steaming pot. For that brings humidity into your spice jar and it's not very useful for our spices. So best to measure them out in advance or put them in your hand and then put them in. You can incorporate these spice mixtures into a sauce, into a vinaigrette, instead of or in addition to salt and pepper. They can also be used directly on the table, like I just mentioned. You can take them with you when you eat away from home in a small container, and that way you always have a digestive aid with you. They're excellent sprinkled over porridge or over cooked grains. I love to put them on toast. So I toast up some bread. I put some ghee, or in the summer, I like to use coconut oil and then spread this on the top. Excellent. And that way for your breakfast, you have a more salty, savory breakfast than a sweet breakfast. You could also whisk them into yogurt, like I talked about earlier, to make a lassi or a digestive yogurt. And I talked about taking them with you as you eat from home, on a picnic or when you're traveling. And then you can also use them as a tea. But here you don't want to use a big amount of water, a large amount of water. It should stay just like an espresso size quantity of water. Simply put a 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of the spice mix in the cup, pour hot water over the top, let it infuse a little bit. And you can take that before a meal, or you can take it with the meal, or after a meal, or even in between meals when you haven't digested. So consider this to be a herb or a spice or herbal remedy that you can tailor to your needs in the moment, changing the quantity, changing the spices as you go from season to season. And as we're on spices, I want to let you know too that it's not only spices that are beneficial for health. Ayurveda also is very much for garden grown herbs, and this is the perfect time of the year to use them. Particularly cooling are dill and basil, coriander, mint, parsley, and chervil. And of course, there are others, but those are some of the main ones. And I mentioned earlier, sorry, coriander is not the right word in English. In French, we say coriander for the leaf and also for the grain, the spice, but in English, it's cilantro. Excuse me for that. So using them fresh, using them dried. And coming back to this morning, I couldn't put a name on that leaf, that multicolored leaf that I called Madagascar pepper. It's also called Hutunia. I couldn't remember the name of it. And also flora waters are Ayurvedic. Consider it, like I mentioned earlier, to be a fire extinguisher for summer. So always have those on hand for the skin. They're wonderful, but you need to keep them in the refrigerator as they go off quite quickly, and to make sure that you choose ones that are preservative free and also organic. Okay, so now once we have a spice mix, what do we do with it? Well, I gave you some ideas, but I also want to give you another idea. And so for those of you who are doing the recipes along with me, feel free to grab a skillet, and I will grab mine, and I will grab my heat source. I'm going to pause the share and go to the chat and see if there are any questions. Anybody? Is everything clear? Are you motivated to make your own spice mixtures at home? Let me see you. Yay! Okay. In the summer and kind of in general, when we're out on a terrace or with friends, we like to have a little something to munch on when we have our cocktail or our mocktail, a beer or our spritz. And everything that's nuts and seeds and chips are all very difficult for the liver, very dense and oily. All of those things that I mentioned too are very salty. So this would be an alternative to those things that I mentioned. You could replace peanuts, especially those are killers for the liver and killers for pitta, to replace them with coconut, which is cooling, albeit oily, but it's cooling and easier to digest than, let's say, peanuts. Or you could also use seeds such as sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds, hemp seeds, but you shouldn't cook with hemp seeds. They're very fragile, the oils in them. So what I'm suggesting in this recipe is to use coconut chips, but I also show you, we can even make a mix if we want, using, I need to get my pot, just a minute. So I chose today coconut chips, which are a little different from coconut flakes. They're kind of thick, that you can make your own if you have a coconut. You just have to open it up and slice it thin and then dry it, and you can make your own coconut chips. And then I made a mix of pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds. And so the idea with this recipe is to lightly toast the coconut chips or the seeds, which is going to make them more digestible. And the idea with seeds is always to have them in small quantities, well chewed, and preferably at lunch rather than at dinner, but it's rarely at lunch that we're having relaxing cocktail with our friends. So better to have things that are easier to digest, like seeds, rather than nuts and chips and things like that. Just a second, I need to get my my pot. One moment, or my pan. So another kind of no nonsense recipe. The idea is that we put in our find a recipient, and I just need to get the herbs out of here just a second. So in the a small bowl, I'm going to put my oil. Here I'm choosing coconut oil, but it could be ghee. It could be also some of the other oils that I mentioned that are appropriate for summer, that aren't too heating and not too heavy. In the summer, we want to put aside walnut oil, hazelnut oil, some of the heavier oils in favor of the lighter oils. And so today I'm using coconut oil, and then directly inside, or with that, I'm going to add my spices, my spice synergy. Here I have some specific quantities, but it can be more or less as you wish. And then that's all ready, so that when I put my toasted coconut on top, it'll all melt, and I'll be able to coat the coconut with the spices and with the oil. And so the oil is basically there to help the spices stick. You could do this one by one, meaning start with the coconut and then add, start with the coconut, and then once that's finished, do the grains, or the seeds, pumpkin or sunflower, or you could try it all together, but probably best to do them one by one, because the cooking times are a little different. And other ways that you could use this would be to, sorry, I need to get, for example, you could use them or eat them just like that as a snack, along with something to drink or not. They could be put in a backpack as you go on a hike. You could also add some dried fruits to that, like mulberries, raisins, figs, dates, all those kinds of travel foods. But just make sure you drink a lot of water when you do that. And it goes quickly, especially if you don't have a gas stove. So here are my toasted coconut, and I'm just going to put that right into, sorry, can't see, right into my my oil and my spices, and then just quickly mix, and that way all of the chips get coated, and I have a nice snack to accompany an appetizer, a cocktail with friends. I also have a nice condiment that could be used on rice or something more soft, or in a soup. I have something that I can add dried fruits with and take as a trail mix. When I'm almost finished here. And then you want to let them cool and dry a little bit. Otherwise, they'll be not so enjoyable to eat. So here we go. Yum. I'll taste one for you. So the idea here as well, if you were to use the seeds, not only would you have an appetizer or a snack, which could be a savory snack, which is more supportive for the kidneys and the adrenals to have salty snacks rather than sweet snacks. You'd also have something that you could transform into a vegan Parmesan. So just to take a step back, the idea of slightly or lightly toasting the seeds is going to help them be better digested rather than eating them just like that. But once you do this method that I just showed you with the coconut chips, and you would replace it with these seeds, Once they've been coated with the oil and coated with the spices and cooled, you could put them in a food processor or a spice grinder, coffee grinder, and grind them up into a powder. And that way you'd have a vegan Parmesan, I call it a Parmesan, that you could use on a soup, you could integrate into over a salad, pasta. It also would be good mixed into a cooked grain over vegetables. So quite versatile. And you could also make a sauce with it. If you have this base of seeds, you could dilute it a little bit with an oil, with a little bit of lemon, put some herbs in, and you could have like a creamy grain, so I keep saying grain, but that's what it is in French, a seed-based sauce. It would kind of replace tahini or a nut butter or something like that. I hope I'm making myself understood. There's a question in the chat. Let's see. Did I fry up the coconut? I did. I dry toasted the coconut. Yes, Libby. Thanks for that. Over really low heat, it goes very quickly. And so that's what I did. And that's makes it more digestible, gives it more flavor, and then also helps the oil and the spices to stick. And someone is asking me to reply to Gwyn, and I will. Glenn asked, what are your thoughts on snacking for pitta types in relationship to Tibetan medicine to leave 5 hours after generous meal before you eat again, so you can fully assimilate all the food and give your system a rest? Or is it very much dependent on the individual and Agni, our digestive fire? Well, it's all of that. And it's that it depends, that famous mantra. So ideally, and this is a new buzzword in the health world. It's called meal spacing, which means leaving ample time between 2 meals in order for full digestion to take place. If we eat too quickly after a meal that has not been properly digested, whatever's digesting gets put on hold, slows down our digestion, and everything that didn't get digested, like I mentioned earlier, ferments, creating toxins and digestive disharmony. So the more space we can leave between meals, the better. And also another buzzword or buzz idea as of late is intermittent fasting, which means giving a bigger break, such as 12 to 18 hours between meals, to enhance digestive function, cognitive function, and health in general. But I'm not going to talk about that too much today. There's plenty of information out there. But again, it's always, it's not something I'm particularly promoting, because everything is situational, and you really have to look at your constitution and your needs. But leaving more time between meals is really something that's going to benefit digestion, because certain functions in the body can't do their job if digestion is happening, which means like for sleeping, to really have a good sleep that repairs the body, that soothes and calms and recharges the nervous system and the digestive system. If we're digesting all night long, well, our nervous system is not going to get repaired. Our kidneys and our adrenals are not going to get recharged, our energy packs, our battery packs. So that's the idea really of leaving space between 2 meals, is so that certain functions in the body can work without interference. The bottom line, or the biggest teaching, I would say, in Ayurveda is really to honor your digestion, honor your hunger. If you're hungry, then you should eat. But first of all, you need to understand if it's a true hunger or not. If you have cravings in between meals, so let's say you've had a meal that's satisfying, or it seems satisfying in the moment, and 2 hours later you feel like you need to eat again? Well, first of all, it could be that you're thirsty, that your body is crying for water. 4 times out of 5, and there were some recent studies done by universities in America, that 4 times out of 5 cravings, like food cravings, I'm talking about like not actually at mealtime, but like in between meals, are issues of dehydration. The body is just really thirsty. So if you're in a situation where 2 to 3 hours after a meal, you feel like you need to eat again, first drink some water and see if it goes away, or take a short rest, or have, Dr. Ladd would often say, have a little bit of honey or a little maple syrup in water. And if your hunger goes away, then it wasn't true hunger, it was just thirst. And so that way you avoid ruining your digestion by eating again. Now, that said, certain constitutions like Vata individuals who have irregular appetites, who need to eat smaller and more frequent meals, there's a little bit of an exception to what I just said. So again, it's understanding if it's true hunger or not. But this idea of grazing or kind of snacking or eating all the time, it's definitely not enhancing digestion. And if there's this desire to snack or to eat 2 hours after a meal, but there's something that's not happy in your digestive tract, often inflammatory conditions in the small intestine and large intestine can give this sensation of wanting to eat or being hungry. And those 2 to 3 hours after a meal is the time when the food that was in the stomach goes into the duodenum, which is the small intestine. And if there's like kind of a moment of transition, if you will, where there's a little bit of digestive discomfort, especially if those that small intestine isn't working up to par. So best thing is to drink water, sip hot water or warm water every 20 minutes and see if that doesn't go away, or just lie down on your left side, which will help with that transition. That's one of the things that Ayurveda would recommend is not so much a nap after a meal, with a couple exceptions, and I'll come to that in a minute. But lying on your left side for 10 minutes is actually beneficial for digestion. And I'm talking about straight after a meal. Going to sleep right away after a meal is a definite sign that something's off and that something needs to be addressed with your digestion. It's not normal. However, there's one exception, that's in hot countries and in the heat of the summer. Often we want to take a rest after a meal. There's no blood going to the brain. Everything's going downwards. And really, there's not much you can do when it's so hot out. So it's okay to take a short nap in the summertime after lunch. It's not ideal, but it's acceptable. Often just taking a walk, if you can, even just going up and down your stairs for those 100 steps after a meal can help with that heaviness or that wanting to sleep, or that method that I suggested of putting cool water in the mouth and splashing the eyes can be very beneficial. And if you need to eat between meals, just do your best to determine if it's a real hunger. And if it's especially in the afternoon, see if you can't hold off a little bit and have dinner earlier rather than snacking. Ayurveda wouldn't be against having more frequent, smaller meals for individuals who suffer from burnout, who are chronically tired. Because their digestion is slowed down, they need to eat smaller meals because they can't eat larger meals, and they need to eat more frequently. So that's important. But something that can be really helpful and not snacking and not feeling like you need to eat every so often is getting ample protein, getting the protein that your body needs. Normally, and this is true also for sweet cravings, a lot of people who have sweet cravings, the sweet craving can be remedied just by getting the right amounts of protein for your type, for your situation, for where you are, from where you come from. People in the Northern Hemisphere need more animal protein than people in the Southern Hemisphere. It really all depends on your ancestry. in terms of the amount of protein, also for your activities. If you're a construction worker, you need much more than someone else, maybe an artist, but someone who does a lot of intellectual work might need more other kinds of foods. So like our mantras from this morning, it's all situational. It all depends. And all of that said, like the best time to have fruit, because we talked about keeping fruit away from everything else, is really when your food has left your stomach, which is generally 3 hours after a meal. So if you're going to have a fruit in the summer, make sure that you've given ample time, like 3 to 4 hours, to have fruit, or make fruit a meal. It could be a breakfast, it could be a light dinner, but try not to mix it with other things. And a couple exceptions about that are like if you are someone who is hypoglycemic and or hyperglycemic, sorry, and you need something to go along with that sugar, the sugar in the fruits, you could have a handful of soaked and peeled almonds along with your fruit to give a little source of protein to help with those sugars. Or some seeds, like we talked about, hemp seeds, or sunflower seeds, or pumpkin seeds in small quantities. Those are kind of the things that would be an okay association or food combining. Voila, I hope, did I answer your question, Glenn? Yay, good. So
I think you hit the nail on the head.
yes, and the last part of it was this: it always depends on Agni. It always depends on your digestive strength, and it's always situational. And just know too that often movement. Personally, I like to snack, or I feel like I need to snack when I'm traveling. All of that movement is very vata vitiating. Vata vitiating means those individuals that are more vata in nature, like the air, or like space, who tend to be ungrounded. What's the thing besides a warm bath, a foot bath, a rest is more grounding than grabbing something that's sweet. It's very instantly anchoring and grounding. And so that's why maybe when I travel, I want to snack to help me ground. But I also have other methods, so I don't always go to food, which is good. And that's kind of a good idea for everybody. Okay. Libby is giving us a testimonial that the coconut snack is delicious. Yay! Thank you for that feedback. I'll pay you later. Okay, let's see. How much time do we have? It's, do we only have 15 minutes left? Is that true? We're going until what time? An hour? We have one more hour, is that right? I just need to know for,
I think we started at about 10 past. So
I can't hear you.
can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me? Michelle, can you hear me?
Jamian, put your video on.
Can you hear me? Michelle? No? Nothing? Nobody?
I can hear you.
I could hear you as well.
I can't hear anybody. Everyone has gone silent.
We can hear you.
Maybe you were mute somehow, Michelle. I mean, maybe you cannot hear us, but I can hear Julia. Can someone else? Jill, can you say something?
I can hear everybody.
So do I have another hour or half an hour or 15 minutes?
20 minutes.
Oh,
15?
Yeah, 20.
20?
Yeah.
Is it okay to do a half an hour?
Okay.
If you need to leave, that's okay. It's just for the organizers,
it
especially
before.
for the recording. So if you can't stay for the entirety, please don't feel obliged, but we will get you what you missed. There's one more recipe that I want to talk about, but I don't think we'll do it because I want to move on to other things, but it's the tangy tahini sauce. Let me pull up the recipe. Screen share, and feel free to go to it as well. So this can bring me to talk about nut butters and seed butters, which normally we wouldn't use so much in the summer because of their heavy, dense, oily qualities. But this is an idea of using one of these nut butters or seed butters, diluted with some sour taste, which is going to help with the digestibility of the nut or the seed, and brings a protein source, just like when we made the yogurt sauce this morning, also bringing extra protein when needed. If you don't feel like cooking up some kind of protein, this is a way of getting it. It's not a dense protein like animal protein or like beans, but there is some protein in it. But it gives good fats and an oily quality that can help feel satisfying. And so the best out of the nuts and seed butters, what is easily digested is sunflower seed butter, not always easy to find. Almond butter, but the almond butter that's the white one that's been, the skins have been removed, or sunflower seed. The other ones, maybe cashew nut as well. But normally these butters shouldn't be eaten just like that out of the jar with a spoon, which I'm very guilty of that, but my liver doesn't agree, and so I've learned my lesson. But using them in this way is more healthy. So they always should be used diluted. So here, you basically take the nut or seed butter and put it in a jar. Very easy to make this way. Add some lemon or lime juice. It could also be apple cider vinegar if you didn't have either one. Some water, more or less the same quantity as the juice. Some freshly grated ginger root, which is going to add some pungency so that we better digest the nut butter. And then some spices to help lighten it up. And cumin seed is particularly good. This is a sauce if you've ever had a hero sandwich or eaten falafel, it's that white sauce that goes over the top. And so with the cumin seeds, you could either use the cumin powdered already or simply dry toast the cumin seeds, which will add a little crunch and also a little more flavor. And a little bit of paprika, which out of all of the peppers, like the hot chili peppers, paprika is more neutral. It's more warming than knock your socks off hot. And so you put this all in a jar and adjust the water, adjust the sour lemon or lime to your liking, and make it either into like a thick sauce or more of a vinaigrette, like a salad sauce. And it's excellent to use on a dish where you need a little bit of flavor enhancement or something like a sauce that's easy to prepare. You could also cut up some fresh herbs from the garden and add to it, or any other spices, like I like to use my spice energies in it as well. It's something that can be used either savory or sweet. Sometimes I like to put it on fruit, like strawberries or a peach, or even like a roasted peach. So it can go either way. You could also use it on tofu, on fish, on like a light meat like chicken. What it doesn't really go so well with is eggs. That would be a little hard on the liver. If you mix this with chickpeas, like cooked chickpeas, you have an instantaneous hummus or any other legume. Sometimes in a pinch, if you don't have the time to soak a legume or bean and cook it up, you could use a can, which is not something that Ayurveda really promotes, but let's be realistic. Sometimes we don't always have time to go through all the steps. So there's what is ideal, and then there's what's realistic. And the idea is when we eat something that's frozen or out of a can, the idea is that we enhance the prana that is missing with spices and with things that are fresh, like adding leafy greens or adding fresh herbs or some spices, especially ginger, that's going to help with the heavy qualities, bringing a little bit of sattva to something that would be more tamasic. And I like to use this sauce to mix in with a cooked eggplant, to make an eggplant caviar that can be eaten warm or cool over pasta with rice, a little thicker spread on toast, which is excellent, like a spreadable. I like a version that a Syrian friend taught me. Instead of an eggplant caviar, a zucchini or summer squash caviar. So cooking up lightly a zucchini or summer squash, and then blending it with this sauce to make kind of a thick dip. It would go well as well with a cooked carrot or beet to make a sauce or like a dip. So lots of ideas. It goes good with cucumber as kind of a twist on the sauce we made this morning. You could also cut down the quantity of nut or seed butter that you use and instead add yogurt. So it could be 1/4 cup of nut or seed butter and 1/4 cup of yogurt. It could also be diluted with a little bit of non-dairy milk. So there are lots of possibilities. I think that's all of our recipes for the day. Let me just check here to make sure I covered everything. I think so. Okay, coming back. So now to finish our time together, I want to share a couple things that were promised. And one of them is how to stay juicy and lubricated this season, which is really important. So using good oils, like we talked about, upping your intake of water, a little bit of salt from time to time in your water in the morning can help with hydration, or that hydration drink that we talked about earlier. Really, as much as you can, avoid the temptation to eat or to drink things coming directly out of the fridge, things that are icy. Try to drink room temperature or even slightly cooler, but really avoid that temptation of icy cold or directly out of the fridge. Drinking outside of meals is more hydrating than drinking with meals, and always small quantities with the meals so that you don't dilute your digestive juices. Again, use more non-cooked oils in your diet, those cold pressed organic oils, like I mentioned earlier. Use more seaweeds if you like seaweeds or sea vegetables, which have a hydrating quality. And anytime that you eat anything that's drying or heating, such as caffeine, coffee, black tea, crunchy dry foods, which would be granola, chips, crackers, spicy food, alcohol, you need to up your fluid intake, especially the 3 hours that follow eating those foods. I highly recommend avoiding totally rice cakes, corn cakes, all of those foods that are totally industrial, that even giving them outside to birds won't even touch them. Sitting out in a torrential rain, they won't even dissolve. So imagine the amount of water that your body needs in order to rehydrate them. So think about those things. And also the method that we used this morning for marinating raw food so that it's less irritating, less rough, less drying. And include maybe some more fats like ghee, coconut oil, maybe the coconut milk, coconut water is very hydrating. So those kinds of things. Let me talk a little bit about cooking methods for the season. So in general, the less amount of time that something has cooked, the less heating it will be. So steaming, again, is ideal in this season. Also, like I talked about, the water and oil saute, half oil, half water. The marinades are also a great way of cooking. grain-based salads, like think about tabbouleh, but not always with couscous, but it can also be quinoa, but using grains and mixing with vegetables, mixing them with the sauce, but again, eating them warm rather than having them cold right out of the fridge. Soups are excellent in the summer. Cooling soups, notably there's one that I love that I recently discovered, but it's a soup that exists since the last century. It's called Beeler's broth. Beeler was an American doctor who suggested eating or getting our healing ourselves through food rather than through medication. And he created this electrolyte, juicy, hydrating soup called the Beeler's broth. And it's the season to eat it because the vegetables included all are grown now. So it's based on 3 vegetables, but that's interchangeable. You can change it with whatever vegetables are available to you in the season. And just one moment, I need to hydrate myself. So this soup, and I can send you the recipe, or you can find it on the internet, is zucchini or summer squash, green beans, and celery. Now, if there's one of those vegetables you don't like, or that doesn't like you, or that are not findable, you can switch them out. Like this spring, I was making asparagus, fennel bulb, and pea soup. Sometimes I add spinach, Swiss chard, whatever speaks to you, whatever's green, and that you like and that likes you. So the idea is you either steam the vegetables, and you don't want to overly steam them so that they're mushy, but you don't want to not steam them enough. They can also be cooked directly in water, but the idea is that you use either the steaming water or the water you've cooked them in to blend up the soup. And at the end, you can add things like parsley or cilantro. The original recipe is for parsley because of its wonderful health benefits. I never use it because it hates me. I like the taste, but it hates me. It's with me all day long. So I substitute with spinach, or I substitute with chervil or mint, or whatever I have on hand or whatever I can find. And it's all mixed up into a broth that can be drunk alongside a meal, like in a mug, or it can be actually a meal. For breakfast, it's delicious for those who would never think about eating vegetables for breakfast. I dare you to try this soup. It's excellent. You can make it more tasty by adding spices, by cooking with a little ginger, a little garlic. But the idea is everything is cooked and it's blended up into a way that's easily digested. So for those of you who are lacking greens in your diet, I highly recommend this soup. For those of you who are feeling dehydrated or not feeling like cooking in the summer or wanting something that's nourishing, try this soup. You can also make it more hearty by mixing in, let's say, a cooked grain like rice to make it more thick. You could serve it alongside some steamed potatoes. You could mix in an avocado, a little bit of coconut milk, maybe not all together, but those are some ideas to make the soup that's tasty and nourishing. And again, sprouting would be another cooking method for the season. What's really important for Pitta individuals, but also in this season, because Pitta individuals are especially particular or persnickety about the quality of their food. Food really needs to be clean. And by clean food, and this is because Pitta's liver and digestive system are very sensitive to toxins like residue from pesticides. It could also be someone's emotions, like the chef's emotions. It could be fiery conversations during a meal. So Pitta needs food that's clean, that's fresh. So best to choose the best quality we can, which doesn't mean going to the most expensive shop, but buying organic or produced without pesticides, produced with love, the best fresh food that we can get. And this is especially true for oil. Out of all the constitutions that suffer the most from bad oils is a pitta individual, because pitta is one of the organs, and we didn't have time to go through the organs, but that's for another session. Liver and gallbladder are part of the digestive system, managed by pitta. And those are the organs as well that are extremely sensitive to oil, especially bad oils. So pitta individuals, and especially in the summer, need to really pay attention to good quality oils. Okay, let me go to something that I find interesting for all. One more screen share. And that's to talk about cholagogues, which are foods that enhance liver and gallbladder function. Sorry, instead of scrolling through, let me find the page and then I'll come back to you just a second. So this is basically anything that, any food that is rich in chlorophyll, that's green, that's astringent, that's bitter. All of these are enhancing, and I'm sorry, I can't find the document, just a moment. So these are going to enhance liver function, bile production, and also keep the body cool, which is really important, as we've talked about. Here we go. So unless you have liquid or loose stools like diarrhea or that kind of tendency, you would use less of these foods and instead of freely using. But these foods are especially good for pitta individuals and especially good for the summer. So anything that is rich in chlorophyll, you can think of chlorophyll like the blood of life, an intestinal fertilizer, like I talked about earlier this morning, because it's going to, the green and the chlorophyll are going to nourish the bacteria, the good bacteria in our intestines. Green and chlorophyll help to clear the blood, keep it cool. And it also helps to exercise our gallbladder. We all need a little bit of that. So what's part of these foods? Vegetables, and especially raw beets. There's something particular about raw beets versus cooked beets and its function on the liver and gallbladder. If you want a recipe for that, you could use the recipe for the marinated fennel salad, or go to the spring recipes and do the recipe from there. Basically the same thing. All leafy greens, almost anything that's green, zucchini, which is also summer squash, celery, fennel, artichoke, asparagus, sprouts, and all kinds of bitter salad leaves and greens are excellent for the summer and also for the liver and the gallbladder. Spices, we talked about those already. Those 5 spices that are particular for summer, they're also very good for the bile and for the liver. Fenugreek is something that takes cholesterol out of the bile, increases bile acid by 4 times. If this is something you don't want, then maybe reduce fenugreek, but fenugreek can be drunk as a tea. It can be sprouted, excellent for bean digestion. You can make a tea out of it, or a infusion, just by putting in water overnight and the next day drinking the water. It's excellent. Certain herbs would be rosemary, hyssop, mint, all really good cholagogues. Yellow roots like gentian, turmeric, and even though it's not yellow, ginger is also good for function. It's not chlorophyll. Here we're talking about something else, but we're talking about in general about foods that are good for the liver and gallbladder. And then herbal bitters, like I mentioned earlier, in a tincture form, like the Swedish bitters or bitter cocktail, also gentian root, dandelion root. In some countries you can find dandelion tea, which is made from roasted roots as a coffee substitute. Barberry is good as well, milk thistle, and aloe vera gel. So those are some ideas to enhance the cooling and astringent and bitter qualities in your diet this summer. And then let's see, we talked a little bit about dairy, and here I'm going to go through just the food categories and how to better appreciate the foods of the season, and also how to antidote the problematic foods. So let me talk with first of all about the fire starters, the things that we want to avoid. So the fire starters are all the stimulants, the things that create too much heat in the body, and notably alcohol, stimulants like caffeine, chocolate, overly sour foods or too much sour, and pungent foods. So let's talk about alcohol. No, we don't need to talk about alcohol. We already did. It's sharp, it's spreading, it's heating. And we talked about what to avoid and what to favor. So we'll go on. Stimulants are heating, they're spreading, they're sharp, and they move heat upwards. And remember, we want to keep the heat down. So some stimulants to avoid or to use in lesser quantities would be chocolate. You can replace chocolate in the summer months. And actually, I don't know about you, but with the heat, I'm not really drawn to eating chocolate. It's just too oily and dense and heavy. But cacao nibs, the raw cacao in the little, the nibs or the little pods, you can chew them. They're bitter and astringent and don't wreak havoc on the liver and create a lot of heat. Coffee, if you're a coffee drinker, it's not the best time of the year to drink coffee. Coffee is more of a spring drink or a winter drink because it's very drying and very heating. But you can antidote coffee with a pinch of cardamom, which helps decrease the acidity or the acid creating nature of coffee. And you can also put a little bit of coconut oil in your coffee. Now, who would think of that? Well, the monks in the Himalayas thought about that, where they put ghee or clarified butter in their black tea. It's actually a remedy for the drying qualities of tea, and also goes straight to joints. So people sitting long hours in meditation can use a little more lubrification. So that's where this idea of putting oil in coffee comes from. And if you're interested, you can look into see what bulletproof coffee is. I don't recommend it for everybody, but it's someone who got inspired by what the monks do in the Himalayan monasteries. But it's adding ghee, clarified butter, or coconut oil or some kind of oil to coffee as an antidote for the drying, heating qualities of coffee, and also to stimulate brain function, and also to stimulate the metabolism. You can switch out coffee or do half and half with chicory root, barley root. The Italians have something called orzo, where you can get in a coffee shop, just like you could get coffee or tea. In some countries, it's called dandy blend, where you can get roasted dandelion root. There's also hemp coffee, acorn coffee. There are all kinds of substitutes that you can either switch out coffee totally or replace, or do half and half. Black tea is very heating, very tannic. Better to have green tea or pu'er. Pu'er is chuocha. But it has kind of a fishy smell and a funny taste, so it's not for everybody. But just know it's one of those teas that's very weak in caffeine, and it could be beneficial for the summer. You could think about having some cooling herbal teas like we talked about earlier: peppermint, hibiscus, fennel, rose, licorice, which is also a demulcent, which helps lubricate the mucous membranes, cardamom, aloe vera. Other things to reduce are sour foods. What are sour foods? Anything that's a store-bought condiment is often very sour. Vinegar, pickles, citrus fruit, grapefruit, orange, those are to be reduced in the season. Also sour dairy, like sour cream or old yogurt, kind of like the difference between young honey and old honey. There's a difference between young yogurt, which means fresh yogurt, yogurt that's maybe you made, which is not difficult at all. It just requires doing it. There are lots of little things that we can do on our own and without having to buy them, but a lot of little things added up take a lot of time. But making your own homemade yogurt is a way to get true probiotics, more than what you buy in the store. And also yogurt that's young, meaning that it's only a couple days old, is less heating than yogurt, say, that was made a month ago or 6 months ago or something like that. Also, kefir would be more cooling because the milk isn't heated, and it could be used also in instead of yogurt. Unripe fruits are sour. For example, an apricot. Take an apricot that's not ripe. It's very sour and aggravating, especially for the summer and pitta. So eat your fruits ripe, and especially exotic fruits, best to have them almost rotten. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but your mangoes, they need to be sweet unless you're cooking them and making a chutney. Bananas, same thing. So, and with one exception, but that's for another talk. Fermented foods are also heating and sour, like sauerkraut, lacto-fermented, kombucha, very spreading and heating. And there are different ideas around fermented foods. They're very beneficial for the intestines, for immunity, for a lot of things, but lesser quantity in the summer because they're heating. Some vegetables are quite pungent and heating when they're eaten raw, like radishes, onions, garlic, shallots, red pepper, chili pepper. Caramelize your onions, caramelize your shallots or garlic. It'll be much more digestible, especially to pitta individuals or in the summer. And as much as possible, avoiding overly pungent spices like chili pepper, black pepper. Red meat is also very heating, especially lamb. Charcuterie, even though it might be nice with friends around an appetizer, it's very heavy and oily, not so good for summer. Better to make something from like, what do you call, like have shrimp or have tuna or ham, but more like white ham. I don't know what you call it in English, but things that are less concentrated in salt and less oily. Try to avoid fried and oily foods like chips, peanuts, French fries, and things like that. Oils, good quality oils. Some of the more cooling oils would be olive oil, flax, sunflower, coconut, ghee, and bitter ghee. Let me just show you quickly because I'm proud of it. One of the things I make for clients and for myself is bitter ghee. It's ghee that's been infused with bitter herbs and spices. And this is something that's particularly beneficial in the summer, and also individuals with skin and liver issues. Let me find it here. Yeah. Can you see it? It's green because there's neem and all kinds of other green Ayurvedic herbs. So this is something that could be taken in the summer to help keep the blood cool and help with the liver and digestion. Other things that we can avoid from our diet in general to help liver health and gallbladder and foods that are inflammatory and heating is anything that's white sugar, white flour, margarine, anything that nature, what I call the white foods, really should have a big no-no for anybody, anything that's overly refined. So using semi-whole grain flours and grains and good natural sugars and good quality oils. So just along those lines, on kind of a light note, the best way to aggravate pitta in the summer or in general, or to increase heat in the summer would be to drink plenty of alcohol, to eat spicy food, to eat chilies, raw onions, tomatoes, sour food, and tons of yogurt. Red meat, salted fish, to eat all kinds of things that are salty, to eat peanut butter directly out of the jar or have a chocolate bar every day, to use drugs like cocaine, speed, marijuana. Those are all heating. Those don't really come into my realm, but I'm just mentioning them in passage. To avoid cool and peaceful places. We want to do the opposite. So I'm going through a list of things that would, if you want to really aggravate your pitta or really increase the heat in the summer, you would do these things. Exercise at the hottest time of the day, engage in frustrating activities wear tight clothes, and repress all your feelings and emotions. So that's what we don't want to do. I want to keep that spirit of easy, free, cooling, relaxed, and enjoyment. So last few words, fruits, again, juicy fruits, stone fruits, cherries, apricots, peaches, figs, avocados, coconut, melons, watermelons, very cooling, very refreshing. But again, far from anything else, best on their own or we leave them alone. I talked about grains already. Barley is especially good in the summer. It's cooling, as well as rice. What else can I share with you? I think that's it. Legumes, beans, excellent, especially the mung beans that I mentioned. And then this is really the last note, I promise, and then I'll let you go. Is I promised a couple self-care rituals. So things that we can do to outside of the food realm. And that would be, goodbye, Christine, thank you for your presence. Lunar techniques, so to invoke cooling qualities, calming qualities, relaxation, to turn on the parasympathetic nervous system. That would be breathing through your left nostril. Longer exhales are cooling. Other lunar techniques are moon bathing. Everyone sunbathes without any problem, but moon bathing, meaning taking, finding a place to lie out in the sun, or excuse me, in the moon, taking a moon bath. Early morning walks so that you absorb the dew and the freshness of the morning. And that's a way of staying cool throughout the entire day. So getting up well before the sun rises and taking advantage of those cool hours of the morning. Dew walks, meaning taking off your shoes, walking in grass while there's still dew. Earthing, lying on the ground and receiving as much of the grounding energy of the earth as possible. And get yourselves into water, springs, lakes, rivers, the sea, the ocean, cool baths, surround yourself by water. And then the last thing would be massage. We may not want to put a lot of oil on our body like Ayurveda recommends at any other time of the year, but know that coconut oil is particularly cooling. And for individuals who have been on their feet all day or feel a bit heavy or energy is pulling towards the legs, massaging the legs with coconut oil, or even massaging the feet and the scalp before going to bed is a great way of bringing coolness into the body. And you can also add some essential oils if you know about them. Sandalwood is particularly cooling, cypress, rose, coos, lavender, mint, and the list could go on and on, but I will free you up. I've already gone over, and it's been a rich day for me, and I hope it has been for you as well. I will give you all the, maybe it's easy just to put it in the chat. I'll give you the set of PDF documents. Would that be helpful for you?
Maybe by email.
Have it right away. And at the end of the PDF documents, there are resources and references where you can learn more and self-instruct with good sources on the internet and enjoy. So let me find the document here. I think it'll go quickly.
Michelle, can you hear anything? Can you hear
One
us now?
second. And if you have any questions about what I covered today or things pop up, feel free to write me. My information is there. Can you not hear me?
We hear you.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Maybe it's my microphone that's
No, you're
okay.
okay.
Let me take this out.
Okay.
I put something in the chat.
Okay. Sorry. Oh, there was also one more question from Libby. So your question, Julia, where is it? Please, okay, I will do that. Okay, so the suggestion is that I send you the document via email, which will be easier. And there's one question, and that's from Libby. She asks, would you please advise on decaffeinated coffee, Swiss water method, for example? Yes. Decaffeinated coffee that's been water processed, which is called the Swiss water method, is to be favored, and any other decaffeinated coffee to be avoided because it's decaffeinated with solvents, which are toxic and not good for us. So yes, yes, yes. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate your presence and your interest.
Thank you so much, Michele.